My name is Emma Miller. I am 28 years old, and I live in a quiet penthouse in the city. It was a Tuesday night in November when my sister finally pushed me too far. The dining room was warm, smelling of roast chicken and expensive wine, but I felt cold. I sat at the end of the table, trying to be invisible. That was my usual spot. Isabella was glowing. She had just been featured in a business magazine again. She held up her glass of wine and looked down the table at me. Her smile wasn't kind, it was sharp. "Emma," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "you really need to stop playing pretend entrepreneur. Your little online thing isn't a real business. It's embarrassing." My mother chuckled. My father nodded in agreement. The sound of their laughter felt like a physical slap. I looked at their faces. They saw a failure. They saw a little sister who needed to grow up. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply wiped my mouth with my napkin and looked Isabella in the eye. "Understood," I said softly. They went back to their wine, thinking they had put me in my place. But they didn't know the truth. They didn't know that the smart money keeping Isabella's company alive was mine. They didn't know I was her silent partner. And they certainly didn't know that I was about to pull the plug. But before I tell you how everything flipped and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Emma Miller. I am 28 years old. To understand why I sat there silently while my sister insulted me, you have to understand how we grew up. It didn't start that night at dinner. It started 20 years ago in a house that looked perfect from the outside, but felt very small on the inside, at least for me. My sister, Isabella, was the sun. My parents revolved around her. They basked in her light. I was just a shadow in the corner of the room. Isabella was loud. She was charismatic. Even when she was 7 years old, she could talk her way out of trouble. If she broke a vase, she would explain it away so well that my mother would end up apologizing to her for putting the vase in a dangerous spot. I was different. I was quiet. I liked how things worked. I liked logic. While Isabella was practicing her smile in the mirror, I was taking apart the toaster to see the heating coils. When I put the toaster back together and it worked better than before, I showed my father. "Look, Dad," I said, holding it up. "I fixed the spring mechanism." He didn't look up from his newspaper. "That's nice, Emma. Don't make a mess." 10 minutes later, Isabella came in holding a drawing of a flower. It was a scribbled, messy thing. "Look at the composition," my mother cried out. "Oh, Isabella, you have such a vision. You see the world differently." They taped the drawing to the fridge. The toaster went back on the counter, unnoticed. That was the pattern of my life. By the time we reached high school, the gap between us was a canyon. Isabella was the star of the debate team. She was the class president. She brought home trophies that were tall and shiny. My parents built a special shelf in the living room just for her awards. They called it the Wall of Excellence. "We are raising a leader," my father would tell anyone who came to visit. He would point to Isabella. "She's going to run the world one day. She has that CEO energy." I didn't have a shelf. I had the garage. It was cold out there, and it smelled like oil and dust, but it was mine. I started building computers from scrap parts I found at the recycling center. I learned to code by reading books from the library. I loved the screen. The code didn't care if I was charismatic. It didn't care if I had a vision. It only cared if I was right. If the code was clean, it worked. It was fair. One evening during my junior year, I landed my first paid gig. A local real estate office needed a database to track their listings. I spent 2 weeks writing the program. When I delivered it, the owner gave me a check for $500. I was 16. $500 felt like a fortune. I ran home, bursting with pride. We were sitting at the dinner table. "Mom, Dad," I said, putting the check on the table. "I made this. I wrote a program for Mr. Henderson." My father picked up the check. He looked at it, then chuckled. "Pocket money," he said. "Good for you, Emma. It's nice you have a hobby to keep you busy." "It's not a hobby," I tried to explain. "It's a job. He wants me to maintain it for a monthly fee." Before I could finish, Isabella slammed the door open. She walked in wearing her debate blazer, looking flushed and important. "I crushed them," she announced. "State finals. We're going to state." My mother jumped up from her chair. My father dropped my check back onto the table like it was a used napkin. They rushed to hug her. "I knew it," my dad shouted. "A winner, we have a winner in the house." They ordered pizza to celebrate. They opened a bottle of sparkling cider. For 2 hours, they listened to Isabella recount every argument she made, every point she scored. My check sat on the table, under the salt shaker, until I quietly picked it up and put it in my pocket. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would never ask for their validation again. I would build my own wall of excellence, and I wouldn't need a shelf in the living room to prove it existed. The college years only made it worse. Isabella got into Harvard Business School. It was the happiest day of my parents' lives. They put a bumper sticker on the car. They bought Harvard sweatshirts. They took out a second mortgage on the house to pay for her tuition and her apartment. It's an investment, my mother said. Isabella is going to make millions. This is just seed money. I chose a state university 2 hours away. It had an excellent computer science program, one of the best in the country, but it wasn't fancy. It didn't have the brand name my parents craved. Well, my dad said when I told them, at least it's affordable. You can probably pay your own way with your little computer jobs. So, I did. While Isabella was flying to Europe for networking trips funded by my parents, I was in the computer lab at 3 a.m. While she was joining sororities and social clubs to build connections, I was building servers. I stopped going home for holidays. I told them I had to study, but really, I was working. By my sophomore year, I wasn't just fixing databases for local realtors anymore. I was consulting for mid-sized logistics companies. I was fixing security flaws for banks. I was making $50,000 a year while I was still a full-time student. I didn't tell them. Why would I? To hear them call it cute. To hear them say it was nice pocket money. I graduated with honors. My parents came to the ceremony, but they spent the whole lunch afterward talking about Isabella's internship at a fashion startup in New York. She's going to change the industry, my mother gushed. She's learning how to be a shark. I looked at my degree. I looked at my bank account on my phone. I had saved enough to buy a small house in cash if I wanted to, but I didn't say a word. I just ate my salad and nodded. That's great, I said. I'm happy for her. And I really was, in a way. I was happy she had her path. I just wished my path wasn't invisible to them. After college, the divergence became permanent. We were on 2 different planets. Isabella launched her startup, TechFlow Innovations. It was a vague company. She used a lot of buzzwords like synergy, disruption, and paradigm shift. She wanted to create an app that connected influencers with high-end brands, but with AI integration. It sounded impressive, but there was no substance behind it. My parents were her first investors. They drained their retirement savings, nearly $200,000, and gave it to her. This is it, my father told me over the phone. Isabella is launching. We're going to be rich, Emma. You should be proud of your sister. She's taking a big risk. I hope it works out, I said. You should learn from her, he added, his voice turning condescending. You're still doing that contracting work, right? Dealing with, what is it, codes? Software architecture, Dad, yes. Right, well, maybe one day Isabella can hire you, give you a real job with benefits. I hung up the phone and stared at the wall of my office. My office was the entire top floor of a building downtown. I hadn't just stayed a freelancer, I had incorporated. My company, Nexus Solutions, was a ghost in the industry. We didn't advertise, we didn't have a flashy website. We didn't need to. My reputation was solid gold. When a Fortune 500 company had a catastrophic data breach, they called me. When a global shipping firm needed to optimize their supply chain algorithms to save millions in fuel, they called me. I had a team of 20 of the best programmers in the world working for me. We were elite, we were expensive, and we were completely private. By the time I was 26, I was personally worth over $80 million. But I lived simply. I drove a Volvo. I wore plain clothes, jeans and black t-shirts. I rented a nice but modest apartment in the city because I didn't want the hassle of owning a mansion. My family saw the Volvo and the jeans, and they saw mediocrity. Isabella, on the other hand, was living the life of a founder. She leased a penthouse. She leased a Porsche. She had a personal assistant whose only job seemed to be holding her coffee and taking photos of her for Instagram. She was burning money. Every time I saw her, she was talking about her burn rate like it was a badge of honor. You have to spend money to make money, Emma, she lectured me one Thanksgiving. That's what they taught us at Harvard. You wouldn't understand. You have a scarcity mindset. We were in the kitchen. I was helping my mother peel potatoes because Isabella didn't do chores anymore. Her hands were too important for manual labor. I understand math, I said quietly, peeling a potato. If you spend more than you bring in for 3 years straight, that's not growth, that's a hole. Isabella laughed. She patted my shoulder like I was a child. Oh, Emma, you're so quaint. You think about business like a grocery store owner. Profit and loss. It's about valuation. It's about the exit strategy. My company is valued at $10 million right now. Valued by who? I asked. By me. And my advisors. I didn't point out that zero revenue meant the valuation was a fantasy. I just kept peeling potatoes. My mother chimed in. Emma, don't be jealous. Isabella is under a lot of pressure. Being a CEO is incredibly stressful. You have a simple life. You clock in, you clock out. Be grateful you don't have her burdens. A simple life. That morning, I had closed a deal with a defense contractor worth $12 million. I had authorized the hiring of 3 new senior engineers. I was managing a portfolio of investments that was outperforming the market by 20%. But to them, I was just Emma, the one who was getting by. I let them believe it. At first, it was because I didn't want to brag, but as time went on, it became a test. I wanted to see if they would ever ask. I wanted to see if they would ever look at me and see me, not the reflection of what they expected. They never did. Isabella's lifestyle became more extravagant. She started getting press coverage. Top 30 under 30 in local magazines. Interviews on podcasts. She was excellent at marketing herself. She was selling the idea of success without actually having the success. But numbers don't lie. Eventually, the money my parents gave her ran out. Then the money from her friends ran out. She started taking loans, high-interest business loans. She was desperate to keep up appearances. She couldn't let the world know that TechFlow Innovations was an empty shell. I watched it all. I had alerts set up for her company. I knew her financials better than she did because I knew how to read the public filings and the industry whispers. I saw the crash coming a mile away. One afternoon, my father called me. He sounded tired. Emma, he said, listen, money is a little tight right now. Your mother and I, we helped Isabella with a bridge loan. Just to get her to the next round of funding. How much, Dad? $50,000. It was the rest of the savings. I closed my eyes. Dad, you already gave her everything. She's so close, Emma. She just needs a little more runway. She's meeting with big investors next month. Once she gets that capital, she'll pay us back tenfold. You have to believe in family. Do you need money? I asked. I can send you some for groceries, for the bills. There was a pause. If you can spare a few $100s, that would be helpful. I know things are tight for you too, so don't worry if you can't. It broke my heart. He was asking me for crumbs, thinking I was poor, while he threw banquets at Isabella, who was setting the money on fire. I'll send a check, Dad. I sent them $5,000. I told them I got a bonus at work. When they received it, my mother called me. Oh, Emma, thank you. We gave it to Isabella immediately. She needed it for a deposit on a venue for her product launch party. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I had sent money to buy them food. They gave it to Isabella for a party. That was the moment the sadness turned into something else. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was resolve. I realized that as long as I was the little sister, as long as I was the struggling tech worker, they would never stop bleeding themselves dry for Isabella. They would never stop enabling her. Isabella wasn't just failing, she was dragging them down with her. And she was doing it with a smile, convinced she was entitled to their sacrifice. I needed to intervene, but I couldn't do it as Emma. They wouldn't listen to Emma. Emma didn't know business. Emma had a scarcity mindset. No, I needed to do it as someone they respected, someone with power, someone with real money. I sat in my office, looking at the skyline. My reflection in the glass looked tired but determined. Okay, Isabella, I whispered to the empty room. You want a big investor. You want a shark. I picked up my phone and dialed my legal team. Get the paperwork ready, I told my lawyer. I want to set up a shell company. We're going to make an acquisition. That was the beginning of the end. I was about to become the most important person in Isabella's life, and she wasn't going to have a clue who I was. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It happened slowly, then all at once. But if you knew where to look, the cracks were visible long before the walls fell down. I knew where to look. 6 months after Isabella's big launch party, I went to visit her at the TechFlow offices. I had to drop off some paperwork for my parents, tax documents they didn't understand and asked me to handle. Her office was in the most expensive district in the city. The lobby had marble floors and a waterfall. A receptionist sat behind a desk that looked like a piece of modern art. I'm here to see Isabella, I said. I'm her sister. The receptionist looked me up and down. I was wearing my usual jeans and a gray sweater. I had a backpack. I didn't look like a founder. Isabella is in a strategy meeting, she said coldly. You can wait. I waited for 45 minutes. While I sat there, I watched the employees. They didn't look like they were working. They looked stressed and confused. I heard snippets of conversation. The server is down again. Did we pay the vendor? She wants to change the logo color, again. It was chaos. Finally, Isabella came out. She looked exhausted, but her makeup was perfect. She was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. Emma, she sighed, I don't have much time. I have investors breathing down my neck. I just brought Mom and Dad's tax forms, I said, handing her the envelope. Also, I wanted to see how things are going. Dad says you're doing great. We are crushing it, she said automatically. It sounded like a rehearsed line. We have so much traction. User engagement is through the roof. Can I see the app? I asked. She hesitated. It's undergoing maintenance right now. We're pivoting to a blockchain integration. I fought the urge to roll my eyes. Blockchain. The last refuge of a tech company with no actual product. Isabella, I said gently. Are you okay? The burn rate on this office alone must be $50,000 a month. Do you have the revenue to support this? Her face hardened. You sound just like the banks. You don't understand vision, Emma. We are building a brand. Revenue comes later. Right now it's about capturing mindshare. She walked me to the door. I have to go. I have a lunch with a potential VP of marketing. He's from Google. I left the building with a heavy heart. I looked up her company's public data when I got back to my car. It was a disaster. She had hired 30 people. Half of them were brand ambassadors or social media coordinators. She had only 3 actual engineers, and they were recent graduates with no experience. She was burning through cash like it was paper. She was paying for catered lunches, yoga classes for the staff, and first-class travel for herself. But the product, the actual app, barely worked. It crashed constantly. The reviews on the App Store were terrible. 1 star. Doesn't load. Scam, takes your data and freezes. Useless. But at home, the denial was absolute. We had a family barbecue a few weeks later. My father was manning the grill, looking proud. Isabella tells me she's hiring a guy from Google, he said, flipping a burger. Can you believe it? Google, she's attracting top talent. Dad, I said, setting the table. Hiring people is easy if you pay them enough. The question is, can she afford him? Stop being negative, my mother snapped. She was making potato salad. You're always looking for holes in her boat. Why can't you just paddle with us? I'm not trying to be negative. I'm worried. You guys put your savings into this. If she fails... She won't fail, my father said sternly. Harvard-trained entrepreneurs always succeed. It's just growing pains. Amazon lost money for years before it made a profit. You have to look at the big picture. They compared her to Jeff Bezos. I looked at Isabella, who was sitting in a lawn chair with a glass of wine, texting on her phone, ignoring everyone. She didn't look like Jeff Bezos. She looked like a child playing dress-up with other people's money. The breaking point for me was the emergency. 3 months later, Isabella missed payroll. She couldn't pay her staff. She called my parents in a panic. I need $50,000 by tomorrow, she cried. Or my developers will walk. It's just a cash flow issue. The bank transfer got stuck. It was a lie. There was no stuck transfer. The account was empty. My parents didn't have $50,000. They had already given her everything. They called me. Emma, my mother was crying. We need help. We can't let Isabella's dream die. It would destroy her confidence. What about your retirement? I asked. What about your security? Family comes first, she yelled. Do you have the money or not? I had the money. I could have written the check in 5 seconds. But I knew if I gave it to them, Isabella would just burn it in a week. It would be like throwing water into a bottomless pit. I can't give you $50,000, I lied. I don't have that kind of liquid cash. Fine, my mother spat out. We'll take a second mortgage on the house. I felt sick. They were going to risk their home, the house I grew up in. They were going to lose everything because they refused to see the truth. I knew then that I had to step in. I couldn't just watch anymore. But I couldn't be the sister who saved them. They wouldn't respect it, and Isabella wouldn't learn. She would just take the money and say, "Thanks, little sister," and go back to spending. I needed control. I needed to own the problem. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room, staring at the dark screen of my laptop. I ran the numbers in my head over and over. Isabella needed a massive injection of capital to survive. But more importantly, the company needed a brain. It needed a restructure. It needed a leader who knew that mindshare didn't pay the rent. If I let her fail now, the bank would take my parents' house. If I gave her money directly, she would waste it. There was only one option. I had to buy her. The next morning, I walked into the office of my financial advisor, David. He was a sharp man in his 60s who had managed my portfolio since I made my first million. He knew the truth about my wealth. He was the only one who did. David, I said, sitting down. I want to make an acquisition. He opened his notebook. Okay, Emma, what are we looking at? Another software firm, a logistics startup? No, I said. I want to buy TechFlow Innovations. David stopped writing. He looked at me over his glasses. He knew about Isabella. I had told him the stories. Emma, he said slowly, that company is a sinking ship. It's toxic. The valuation is inflated, the product is garbage, and the CEO is inexperienced. From a financial standpoint, it's a terrible investment. I know, I said. I'm not buying it for the profit. I'm buying it for the control. I leaned forward. I want to acquire a controlling stake, 51% or more. But my name cannot appear anywhere on the paperwork. Isabella cannot know it's me. My parents cannot know, David sighed. We can do that. We can route the funds through a series of shell companies. We can set up a special purpose vehicle. Let's call it Apex Strategic Ventures. It will look like a high-end private equity firm from New York. Perfect, I said. How much will it take to get a controlling interest and stabilize the company for 2 years? He tapped on his calculator. To pay off her debts, restructure the payroll, and give her enough runway. You're looking at a commitment of $150 million over time. It's a massive risk. $150 million. It was a huge chunk of my net worth. But I had earned it. And if I didn't do this, my family would be destitute. Do it, I said. Draft the offer, make it aggressive. We want board seats. We want veto power on all major financial decisions, but leave her as CEO for now. Let her think she won. You're a generous sister, David said, shaking his head. I hope she appreciates it one day. She won't, I said, but that's not why I'm doing it. 2 days later, the offer landed on Isabella's desk. I wasn't there, but I heard about it at Sunday dinner. Isabella burst into the house like she had won the lottery. She was carrying a bottle of champagne that cost $300. I did it, she screamed. I told you. I told you I was a genius. My parents jumped up. What happened? I just got a term sheet, she gasped, popping the cork. From Apex Strategic Ventures. They are huge. They're mysterious, very exclusive. They want to invest. They value the company at $300 million. My father pumped his fist in the air. Yes, I knew it. What did I tell you? He turned to me. I was sitting at the table, drinking water. Did you hear that, Emma? Apex Ventures. That's the big leagues. That's not fixing computers in a garage. That's Wall Street. That's amazing, I said, keeping my voice steady. How much are they putting in? $150 million, Isabella said, pouring the champagne. Can you imagine? I'm rich. We're all rich. Did you read the terms? I asked quietly. Did you check the control clauses? Isabella waved her hand dismissively. Oh, stop being a lawyer. The lawyers are handling it. They love my vision. They said my leadership is exactly what the market needs. I looked down at my plate. I had written those words. I had told David to stroke her ego in the cover letter. I knew exactly what she needed to hear to sign the papers. Congratulations, Isabella, I said. Thank you, she smirked. Maybe now you'll stop worrying about my burn rate. Serious investors understand that you have to spend big to win big. The deal closed 2 weeks later. Isabella signed the papers that gave Apex Strategic Ventures, gave me complete control over her company. She signed away her freedom, her decision-making power, and her ownership, all because she was blinded by the dollar signs. She thought she had found a savior. She didn't realize she had just handed the leash to the dog she had been kicking for 20 years. For the next few months, things were strange. I would sit in my apartment, reading reports from my own company about my sister's company. I saw everything. I saw her expensing spa weekends as team building. I saw her hiring a chief vibes officer. I saw the emails she sent to the Apex representatives, who were just my lawyers. She was arrogant, demanding, and rude. I need approval for a private jet charter to Davos, she wrote in one email. It is essential for networking. I sat there, drinking my coffee, and typed a reply to my lawyer, request denied. Tell her to fly commercial or not at all. I watched the meltdown happen in real time. Isabella called my parents, furious. These investors are so controlling, they won't let me do anything. They don't understand my process. They're just protecting their investment, honey, my dad soothed her. You have to play the game. I am the game, she screamed. It was a power struggle between Isabella and a ghost. She was fighting an enemy she couldn't see. She had no idea that the person denying her private jet was the same person she made fun of for driving a Volvo. I watched patiently from the shadows. I was waiting. I was waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. I wanted to give her a chance to humble herself. I wanted to see if she would learn to be responsible with the real money she claimed to want. She didn't. She got worse. And then came the dinner in November. The night she decided to insult me one last time. The night she decided to bite the hand that was literally feeding her. That was the night I decided the waiting was over. It was the third Thursday in November. Thanksgiving. But in my family, holidays weren't really about gratitude. They were about performance reviews. I drove to my parents' house in my Volvo. It was raining, a cold, gray rain that stuck to the windshield. I felt a knot in my stomach, the same knot I had felt every time I turned onto their driveway for the last 10 years. I parked on the street because Isabella's Porsche and my father's new sedan, which Isabella had leased for him with company funds, took up the entire driveway. When I walked inside, the house was warm and smelled of sage and roasting turkey. It was the smell of my childhood, but it didn't make me feel safe. It made me feel like I was walking onto a stage where I didn't know my lines. "Emma, you made it," my mother said. She didn't hug me. She gestured vaguely toward the kitchen. "Can you check the rolls? I don't want them to burn. Isabella is showing us her press kit." I went to the kitchen. I checked the rolls. I poured myself a glass of water. I took a deep breath and walked into the living room. Isabella was holding court. She was wearing a red silk dress that looked beautiful but impractical for a family dinner. She held a glossy magazine in her hand. "It's a 4-page spread," she was saying. "They called me a disruptor. They said I'm redefining the digital landscape." "Incredible," my father beamed. He was wearing a suit, even though we were just eating at home. He wanted to match her energy. "A disruptor, that's my girl." Isabella looked up and saw me. "Oh, hi Emma, did you see the article, or do you not read Forbes?" "I haven't seen it yet," I said quietly. "Congratulations." "I'll send you a copy," she said, tossing the magazine onto the coffee table. "It might be a little over your head though. It talks a lot about macroeconomics." I sat down in the corner chair. I wanted to say, I read Forbes every morning. I actually know the editor. But I didn't, I just nodded. Dinner was an exercise in endurance. My mother had brought out the fine china. The table was set perfectly. Isabella sat at the head of the table, a spot usually reserved for my father. He had happily ceded it to her. "So," Isabella started, spooning stuffing onto her plate. "How is, whatever it is you do, Emma? Still fixing laptops?" "I run a consultancy," I said. I kept my voice even. "We handle software architecture for large clients." "Right," she waved her fork. "Coding. It's so cute that you kept up with that. I remember when you used to tinker in the garage. It's good you found a little niche." "It pays the bills," I said. "Does it?" my father asked, looking concerned. "Because I know the economy is tough. If you ever need a loan, Emma, just ask. Now that Isabella is doing so well, maybe she can help you out." I gripped my fork so hard my knuckles turned white. "I'm fine, Dad. I don't need money." Isabella laughed. It was a light, tinkling sound. "Oh, Dad, don't embarrass her. Not everyone is cut out for the big leagues. Emma likes her quiet life. She likes playing it safe." She took a sip of wine and looked at me with pity. "You know, Emma," she continued, "I was talking to my investors the other day. Apex Ventures, the guys with the $150 million check, they were asking about my team. They asked if I had any family in the business." I froze. I looked at her. "What did you say?" "I told them no," she smirked. "I told them my sister is more of a hobbyist. I didn't want them to think I had any dead weight attached to the brand." The table went silent. My mother let out a short laugh. "Oh, Isabella, that's a bit harsh." But she was smiling. She thought it was funny. "It's true though," Isabella said, leaning forward. Her eyes were bright with cruelty. She was drunk on her own perceived success. "Real business requires real risk, Emma. It requires guts. You sit behind a screen and type code for pocket change. You're playing pretend entrepreneur. Your little online thing isn't a real business." She paused for effect. "You're a worker bee," she said. "I'm the queen." The entire table laughed. My father chuckled, shaking his head. My mother covered her mouth to hide her giggle. They were laughing at me. They were laughing at the person who had paid for the roof over their heads 2 years ago when Dad lost his job. Though I had done it anonymously, so they wouldn't feel shame. They were laughing at the person who owned the very company Isabella was bragging about. They were laughing at the hand that held their fate. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was a quiet, final click, like a lock turning. For years, I had protected them. I had hidden my success so I wouldn't outshine Isabella. I had bilayed them out so they wouldn't suffer. I had invested in Isabella so she wouldn't fail. I had treated them with love. They had treated me with contempt. I realized then that my silence wasn't humility. It was enabling. By hiding the truth, I was letting them live in a delusion. And that delusion was turning them into monsters. I looked at Isabella. I looked at her smirk. I looked at my parents' laughter. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table. Understood, I said calmly. Don't be sensitive, Isabella said, rolling her eyes. I'm just giving you advice, tough love. If you want to be successful, you need to stop playing small. You're right, I said. I stood up. I should stop playing small. Leaving already? My mother asked. We haven't had pie. I have some work to do, I said. Big business to attend to. Isabella snorted. Right, go fix a server, Emma. I walked out of the house. I got into my Volvo. I sat in the dark for a moment, listening to the rain hit the roof. I felt incredibly calm. The sadness was gone. It was replaced by clarity. I took out my phone. I didn't call my therapist. I didn't call a friend to vent. I opened my secure email app. I drafted a message to David, my lead advisor at Apex Strategic Ventures. Subject: Immediate action required. Project Icarus. David, it is time. Initiate the withdrawal protocols for TechFlow Innovations. I want a full liquidation of our position. I want the credit lines frozen effective Monday morning at 9 a.m. Draft the notice of loss of confidence for the board. Do not accept calls from the CEO. Route all communication through legal. Proceed. I hit send. I watched the progress bar slide across the screen until it said sent. I started the car and drove home. I slept better that night than I had in 20 years. Monday morning arrived with a bright, cold sun. The sky was blue. It was a beautiful day for an execution. I woke up at 6 a.m., made coffee, and sat on my balcony. I lived in a penthouse, though my family thought I lived in a studio. From my balcony, I could see the skyline of the city. Somewhere in that cluster of buildings was Isabella's office. At 8:55 a.m., I opened my laptop. I logged into the secure dashboard that monitored my investments. I watched the clock. 8:58 a.m., 8:59 a.m., 9 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from David. It is done. The letters have been delivered. The bank accounts are frozen. I took a sip of coffee. Across the city, in the glass-walled conference room of TechFlow Innovations, chaos was erupting. I knew exactly what was happening because I had access to the internal security logs, but I didn't need them. I could imagine it. Isabella would have walked in late, holding her latte. She would have found 3 men in suits waiting for her. Not the friendly brand consultants she was used to. Lawyers. They would have handed her a document, a notice of withdrawal of capital support. It meant Apex Ventures was pulling out. It meant the credit line. The money she used to pay for the office, the staff, the lease, the Porsche was gone. Instantly. Technically, because of the clauses I had insisted on inserting into the contract, Apex had the right to demand repayment of the initial loan if certain performance metrics weren't met. I had set those metrics high, knowing she would miss them. I had waived them for months. Today, I stopped waiving them. At 9:15 a.m., my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. At 9:17 a.m., my father called. I let it go to voicemail. At 9:20 a.m., Isabella called. I picked up. I wanted to hear it. Hello, I said, keeping my voice sleepy as if I had just woken up. Emma, she was screaming. She was hysterical. I had never heard a human sound like that. It was a mix of rage and pure terror. Emma, you have to help me. It's a disaster. Calm down, I said. What happened? Did you break a nail? Shut up, she shrieked. They pulled the money, Apex. They just walked in and said they're pulling the funding. They froze the accounts. I can't make payroll. I can't pay the rent. Who is Apex? I asked innocently. Are those the smart investors you bragged about? They are ruining me. They said I violated the competency clause. Can you believe that, me? Competency, she was hyperventilating. I need money, Emma. I need cash now. I need you to call Mom and Dad. Tell them to mortgage the house. Tell them to sell the cars. I need $2 million by noon to stop the injunction. Isabella, I said, Mom and Dad don't have $2 million. They gave you everything. Then do you have any savings? Do you have a credit card? I need anything. I thought my business wasn't real, I said. I thought I was just playing pretend. Don't do this to me, she screamed. This is my life. I am a CEO. I cannot fail. What will people say? They'll say you went bankrupt, I said. It happens to businesses that don't have revenue. You're useless, she yelled. You're a jealous, useless bitch. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to call the chairman of Apex. I'm going to charm him. He just needs to hear my vision. She hung up. I looked at my phone and smiled. She was going to call the chairman. I waited. 5 minutes later, my other phone rang. The encrypted one I used for my own business. Miss Narrator, David's voice came through clearly. We have the CEO of TechFlow on the line. She is demanding to speak to the managing partner. She says it's a misunderstanding. Put her on speaker, I said, but don't tell her who is listening, just tell her the board is convened. I listened in. Hello, Isabella's voice was trembling now. She had switched from rage to desperation. This is Isabella. I want to explain. The burn rate is necessary for growth. If you cut me off now, you lose everything too. David's voice was cold. Miss Isabella, our analysis shows that the capital has been misappropriated for personal luxury items and non-essential branding. We are exercising our right to liquidate. Unless you can provide an immediate injection of capital from another source to buy out our position, the company will be dissolved on Friday. I can find other investors, she stammered. I have connections. I went to Harvard. You have until Friday, David said. Good day. The line went dead. For the next 3 days, I watched my family disintegrate. My parents came to my apartment. I buzzed them in. They looked 10 years older than they had at Thanksgiving. My mother's eyes were red from crying. Emma, my father said, sitting on my couch. He didn't notice that the couch was Italian leather. He was too distracted. We are in trouble. Isabella is going to lose the company, and if she does, the creditors might come after us because we co-signed the initial loans. I told you not to do that, I said gently. We had to, my mother sobbed. She's special. She needed a chance. She had a chance, I said. She had $150 million worth of chances. You have to help, my father said. I know you don't have much, but maybe you can take out a loan against your equipment, your computers. I looked at them. Even now, facing ruin, they still thought my business was a few computers in a room. They couldn't conceive that I might have the power to save them. They were asking me to go into debt to pay for the wreckage of their golden child. I won't take out a loan, I said. You are selfish, my mother cried. We raised you, we fed you. And now, when your sister is drowning, you just sit there. I am not taking out a loan, I repeated, but I might know someone who can help. They looked up. Hope washed over their faces. Who? My father asked. A client, something like that, I said. There is an investor I know, he's very private, but he buys distressed companies. I can try to get you a meeting. Oh, Emma, my mother hugged me. Thank you, I knew you were good for something. Call him right now. I'll set it up, I said, but there's a condition. The meeting has to be with everyone. Isabella, you, me, and the investor's representative. Anything, my father said. Just save the company, I nodded. Okay, the meeting is Friday, at Isabella's office, 10 a.m. They left, feeling relieved. They thought I was calling a favor from some mid-level manager. They didn't know I was calling the shots. Thursday passed in a blur. Isabella was frantically calling everyone she knew, but word had gotten out. TechFlow is toxic. No one wanted to touch it. Her friends from the gala circuit stopped answering her texts. Her network evaporated. She was alone. Friday morning came. I dressed differently that day. I didn't wear my jeans. I didn't wear my gray sweater. I put on a black suit. Tailored, sharp, I wore heels. I put on my expensive watch, the one I usually kept in the safe. It was a Patek Philippe worth more than Isabella's car. I pulled my hair back. I looked in the mirror. The victim was gone. The little sister was gone. The CEO was here. I drove to Isabella's office. I didn't park on the street. I pulled into the reserved spot right in front of the building. The security guard started to walk over to tell me to move, then saw the car, saw my face, and stepped back. I walked into the lobby. My parents and Isabella were already there. They were huddled in the waiting area. Isabella looked like a ghost. She was wearing sweatpants. She hadn't washed her hair. She looked broken. When she saw me, she blinked. She didn't recognize the suit. She didn't recognize the energy. Emma, she said, why are you dressed like that? I have a meeting, I said. Is the investor coming? My father asked, looking around nervously. Is he here? Come with me, I said. I didn't walk to the waiting area chairs. I walked past the receptionist. I walked straight to the double doors of the boardroom. Emma, you can't go in there, Isabella hissed. That's for the board. We have to wait here. I pushed the doors open. Inside, David was sitting at the head of the long mahogany table. Two other lawyers sat beside him. They were reviewing documents. When I walked in, David stood up immediately. The lawyers stood up. They buttoned their jackets. It was a sign of respect. Good morning, Miss Narrator, David said. My parents stopped in the doorway. They looked from David to me. They were confused. Why was this important man standing up for Emma? Please, sit down, I said to the room. I walked to the head of the table. David moved aside and pulled out the chair for me. I sat down. The leather chair creaked softly. I placed my hands on the table. Isabella, Mom, Dad, I said, gesturing to the empty seats on the other side of the table. Take a seat. Emma, what are you doing? Isabella whispered. Her voice was shaking. Get out of that chair. That's for the managing partner of Apex. I know, I said. I looked her dead in the eye. Please, sit down. We have a lot to discuss regarding my money. The silence in the room was heavy. It felt physical, like the air had been sucked out. Isabella stood frozen near the door. Her mouth was slightly open. She looked at me sitting in the leather chair at the head of the table, then she looked at David, then back at me. Emma, she said, her voice trembling. Get out of that chair. This isn't funny, you're embarrassing us. My father stepped forward. He looked nervous. Emma, honey, please, we are waiting for a very important man, the managing partner of Apex. If he walks in and sees you sitting there. He is here, David said. His voice was calm and professional. He didn't look at my father, he looked at me. He, Isabella snapped. Where? The managing partner is sitting in the chair, David said. Isabella let out a sharp, hysterical laugh. Emma, you think Emma is the investor? David, or whatever your name is, my sister fixes computers for a living. She lives in a rental. She drives a 10-year-old Volvo. She turned to me, her face twisting into a sneer. Okay, Emma, very funny. Did you hire these actors? Is this some kind of sick joke because I uninvited you from the gala? Get up, I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just watched her. David, I said quietly, please read the capitalization table for TechFlow Innovations. David opened a blue folder. Certainly. The current ownership structure is as follows. Isabella Miller, 15%. The Miller Family Trust, 5%. Apex Strategic Ventures, 80%. And who owns Apex Strategic Ventures? I asked. Apex Strategic Ventures is a wholly owned subsidiary of Nexus Solutions, David read, which is solely owned by Miss Emma Miller. The room went dead silent again. My mother grabbed my father's arm. She looked like she was going to faint. Nexus Solutions, but isn't that just your little website? Nexus Solutions is a global software consultancy, I said. We generated $40 million in profit last year. And the $150 million that was injected into this company, that was mine. I wrote the check. Isabella's face went pale. All the color drained out of it. She gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. No, she whispered. That's impossible. You can't have that kind of money. You're Emma. I am Emma, I agreed. The one you called a worker bee. The one you said was playing pretend. But the money is real, Isabella. And because the money is real, the control is real. I picked up the document in front of me. And right now, I continued, I am exercising that control. My father finally found his voice. But instead of being proud, he looked angry. He looked betrayed. You had this money all along, he shouted. You let us worry, you let us mortgage the house, you let Isabella stress herself sick, and you were sitting on millions. I paid off your mortgage 2 years ago, I said. I did it anonymously through the bank. You thought it was a clerical error or a forgiveness program. It was me. He stopped shouting. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. And I didn't let Isabella stress, I said. I saved her. Who do you think kept this company alive for the last 18 months? Who do you think approved the payroll? Who do you think paid for the lease on this office? I looked at Isabella. Every time you flew first class, you were spending my money. Every time you bought a designer handbag and expensed it, you were stealing from me. Every time you bragged about your smart investors, you were bragging about me. Isabella started to cry. But it wasn't a soft cry, it was ugly sobbing. She slumped into a chair. Why didn't you tell me? She wailed. Why did you humiliate me like this? I didn't humiliate you, I said. You did that yourself. I gave you anonymity. I gave you a chance to run the company without knowing your little sister was the boss. I wanted to see if you could do it. I wanted to see if you would treat the business with respect. I leaned forward. But then you told me I was playing pretend. You told the world I was a failure, so I decided it was time to show you what real business looks like. I turned to David. David, please play the recording from the board meeting last month, the one where Isabella discussed the budget. David tapped his laptop. A voice filled the room. It was Isabella's voice, loud and arrogant. I don't care what the investors say. They're just money bags. They don't understand genius. We're going to double the marketing budget. If they complain, I'll tell them to go to hell. I am the star here. The recording stopped. My parents looked down at the floor. They couldn't look at me. They couldn't look at Isabella. The illusion of the golden child was shattering right in front of them. They saw her arrogance. They saw her incompetence. And they saw that the daughter they had ignored was the only reason they weren't destitute. So, I said, closing the folder, here is the situation. Apex Ventures, meaning me, has lost confidence in the CEO. We are withdrawing support. Please, my mother begged. Emma, don't destroy her. She's your sister. I'm not going to destroy her, I said, but I am going to fire her. You can't fire me, Isabella screamed. She jumped up, her sadness turning back into rage. I founded this company. It's mine. My name is on the door. Actually, I said calmly, your name is on the lease, a lease you can't pay. The company belongs to the shareholders. And I am the majority shareholder. I slid a piece of paper across the long table. This is a termination notice, I said. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties as CEO of TechFlow Innovations. Isabella looked at the paper like it was a bomb. She didn't touch it. I won't sign it, she spat. You don't have to sign it, David interjected. It's a notification, not a request. Your access cards have already been deactivated. Your company email has been suspended. My father stood up. He looked tired. The fight had gone out of him. Emma, is this necessary? Can't you just help her? Can't you guide her? Why do you have to take her title? Because she hasn't earned it, Dad, I said. You spent her whole life telling her she was a leader. You gave her trophies she didn't win. You gave her money she didn't work for. And look where it got her. She's 30 years old, she's broke, and she treats people like dirt. I looked at him with genuine sadness. I'm not doing this to hurt her. I'm doing this to teach her, something you never did. I turned back to Isabella. She was shaking. However, I said, I am not going to leave you on the street. I am restructuring the company. I have hired a new CEO. Her name is Sarah. She ran a logistics firm in Chicago for 10 years. She knows how to actually build a business. You're replacing me, Isabella whispered. Yes, but Sarah needs a product manager, someone who knows the original vision of the app. Someone who can handle the creative side but has no access to the bank accounts. I pointed to the paper. I am offering you a job, Isabella. Senior Product Manager. The salary is $80,000 a year. You will have health insurance. You will have a $401,000. $80,000, she scoffed. I was paying myself $300,000. And that's why the company is failing, I said. $80,000 is a fair market rate for your experience level. Actually, it's generous. I won't do it, she said. I won't work for you. I won't be your employee. That is your choice, I said. If you refuse the role, we will liquidate the company today. The intellectual property will be sold for scrap. The brand will die, and you will still owe the bank for the personal loans you took out. I paused. Or you can take the job. You can learn from Sarah. You can actually work. You can help build something real. And maybe, in 5 years, if you prove yourself, you can earn some equity back. The room was silent. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Isabella looked at my parents. She wanted them to save her. She wanted them to yell at me, to tell me I was being mean, to make me give her the company back. But my father just looked at his hands. My mother was weeping softly into a tissue. They knew I was right. For the first time in their lives, they couldn't argue with the math. They couldn't argue with the reality. Isabella looked at the door. She could walk out. She could keep her pride. But if she walked out, she lost everything. She looked back at me. Her eyes were hateful, but they were also defeated. I need the insurance, she mumbled. I can't hear you, I said. I'll take the job, she said louder. I'll take the damn job. Good, I said. Sarah starts on Monday, be here at 9 a.m., and Isabella, don't be late. Sarah doesn't tolerate lateness. I stood up. I buttoned my suit jacket. Meeting adjourned, I said. I walked out of the boardroom. I didn't look back. I walked past the receptionist, past the waterfall in the lobby, and out into the fresh air. My father ran after me. He caught me at my car. Emma, he called out. I turned around. He looked small, he looked old. Emma, he said, catching his breath. I didn't know about Nexus, about everything. I'm proud of you. I looked at him. I had waited my whole life to hear those words. I used to dream about them. I used to replay them in my head. I'm proud of you, Emma. But now, hearing them, I felt nothing. It was too late. He was only proud because he saw the money. He was only proud because I held the power. He wasn't proud of my code. He wasn't proud of my hard work. He was proud that I had won the game he valued. Thank you, Dad, I said, but you don't have to pretend. I know you wanted it to be Isabella. No, he stammered. We just thought. She needed us more. She did need you, I said. She needed you to be parents, not fans. I opened the car door. I'll see you at Christmas, Dad, but I won't be cooking. I'm going to hire a caterer. I can afford it. I got in the car and drove away. 6 months passed. The transition wasn't easy. The first few staff meetings were awkward. Isabella hated reporting to Sarah. She hated having to clock in. She hated that she didn't have an assistant to fetch her coffee. But she did it. Because she had no choice, she actually started to work. She learned how to create a product roadmap. She learned that you couldn't just demand things. You had to build them. She stopped posting on Instagram about being a boss babe and started reading manuals on user interface design. The company started to turn around. Sarah was brilliant. She cut the costs, fixed the bugs, and focused on a niche market. TechFlow wasn't a unicorn, but it was becoming a solid, profitable business. I didn't go to the office often. I let Sarah handle it. I was the silent partner again, but this time, everyone knew I was there. My relationship with my family changed. We still had Sunday dinners, but the dynamic was different. My parents were careful around me. They treated me with a strange mix of respect and fear. They asked me for financial advice. They asked me about my trips. They tried to be interested in my life. How is Nexus doing? My mother would ask. Good, I would say. We just signed a contract with a hospital network. That's wonderful, she would say, and she meant it. But there was a distance between us. The years of neglect couldn't be erased with a bank transfer. They loved me, I knew that. But they didn't know me, and I realized they never really would. Isabella was the biggest surprise. One evening, I stayed late at the TechFlow office to sign some shareholder documents. The office was empty except for one light in the corner. It was Isabella. She was sitting at her desk, a regular desk, not the corner office. She was staring at a spreadsheet. She looked tired. She wasn't wearing makeup. She was wearing glasses. She saw me walking past. Hey, she said. Hey, I said. Working late. Yeah, she rubbed her eyes. Sarah wants this user data analysis by tomorrow. The retention rates are actually going up. Turns out if the app doesn't crash, people stay. She let out a dry laugh. I stopped. Isabella, I said. The report looks good. I saw the draft. She looked at me. For the first time in our lives, there was no smirk. There was no jealousy, just exhaustion and a strange kind of peace. You were right, she said quietly. About what? About the work. It's hard. I didn't know it was this hard. I thought being a CEO was just talking. I thought it was just having the vision. She looked down at her hands. I was playing pretend, she admitted, and you let me do it for a long time. I didn't do it to hurt you, I said again. I know, she said. She looked up. You saved the company. I know that now. If you hadn't pulled the plug, I would have driven it off a cliff, and Mom and Dad would have gone with me. It wasn't an apology exactly. Isabella wasn't the type to say, I'm sorry. But it was an acknowledgement. It was the truth. I'm glad you're doing the work, I said. You're actually good at the product side, Isabella. When you stop trying to be famous. She smiled, a small, genuine smile. Yeah, well, maybe one day I'll earn that equity back. Maybe, I said. I walked to the elevator. I stepped out into the cool night air. I looked up at the building. I saw the light still on in Isabella's window. She was working. Finally, I walked to my car. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from my bank. A dividend payment from Nexus Solutions. Another deposit. Another zero. I didn't feel a rush of excitement. I just felt calm. I realized that for years I had been waiting for a moment of big, dramatic justice. I wanted them to beg. I wanted them to cry. And I got that in the boardroom. But the real satisfaction wasn't the screaming. It wasn't the look on their faces when they saw the bank account. The real satisfaction was the quiet. It was the feeling of driving my own car to my own home, paid for by my own work. It was the knowledge that I didn't need their applause to be valuable. I didn't need their permission to be powerful. I had built my own empire in the dark, and now that it was in the light, it shone brighter than anything they could have imagined. Success doesn't need noise. It doesn't need a gala. It doesn't need a magazine cover. Success is simply the freedom to be exactly who you are without apology. I started the engine. The radio played a soft song. I drove home, not as the victim, not as the forgotten sister, but as Emma. And for the first time, that was enough.